here going, if we're lucky. How's everyone doing? All right, there we go. All right, so just a few tabs to go over, a couple videos here. But it looks like Joe Biden is giving the Medal of Honor to an illegal immigrant here. Clearly a Lakers fan. Love it. Precisely. Biden is illegals first, Americans last. Okay, so this is kind of an interesting video with Dr. Drew. Turn the volume up here.
So the quarantine lawsuit against Governor Hochul and her Department of Health is still raging on. When I was on your show last, we had just had oral arguments on that case. We won, just to remind your viewers, we won this lawsuit against Governor Hochul back in 2022, and we got her isolation and quarantine procedures regulation struck down as unconstitutional. The most draconian regulation I've ever read or heard of in my entire life. And I've been practicing law for 25 years. But that was struck down in 2022 by the trial court, and she appealed. She and the Attorney General, Letitia James, here in New York, appealed that. And we had just had oral arguments at the appellate court when we came on your show, Senator Borrello and myself. He's my lead plaintiff. And then we got the decision from the appellate division in November of 2023, and they dismissed our case and said that my plaintiffs had no standing, which is completely wrong, and it's a calamitous decision. Obviously, a sitting New York State senator and assembly members, because I also represent Assemblyman Chris Tague, Assemblyman Mike Lawler, who's now Congressman Mike Lawler, and a citizens group, Uniting New York State. And obviously, this group has standing. I mean, especially the legislators who are challenging their authority to make laws versus an agency under the governor's authority to make laws, right? It's horrendous, this decision. So we just filed our appeal with the Court of Appeals last week, and that is the highest court in New York State. So we are waiting to see, as this battle rages on, how it's going to pan out. But yeah, this is the unbelievable, astonishing decision from the appellate court. My plaintiffs don't have standing, apparently.
I think, which is wild, but only as wild as so many of the things we're all reading and hearing about throughout the land, frankly, not just in New York, in terms of, I don't know how to frame it. I'm hoping you can help me with this, the behavior of our judicial system. I don't know how else to frame it except that it's been sort of like mind-boggling, some of the decisions, and sort of difficult to understand why can be such massive variation in opinions. What has happened to our legal?
You can see Dr. Drew trying to dodge here
system.
Yeah, it is astonishing.
And unfortunately, she doesn't really give a good answer. And she just goes on about her own case. She doesn't talk about more broader issues with the judicial system. But I think it was a good question from Dr. Drew, and I think Dr. Drew is definitely trying to be diplomatic in the way that he was phrasing it. He knows. It looks the same. That looks really bad. I wonder what rent was like back then in 1989. I mean, okay, it looks awful. I mean, who would want to live there? So this is a really long video. Okay, so this appears to be 2020. And it's the same. I don't know. No, that looks like 1989. Okay, so they're like, I don't know if this is a little weird. Surprising how much support there is. I mean, they have a massive, convoy line. It's a weird time of year to be doing this too, in February. So here's what I think is going to happen. I think there's going to be widespread civil unrest beginning when everything starts to get warm. Now, I realize this is in South Texas, so everything is pretty much warm year-round, except for January. But as soon as things start to warm up, we're going to see widespread civil unrest, tons of protests. You're going to see the government hit back against Trump supporters. And if anything, I think that they could potentially, tying this back to those pandemic quarantine powers, they could somehow try and use those powers to usurp homeowners' rights, and especially in New York and California, and place illegal immigrants in people's homes. Because they will claim that, being exposed to the elements for an illegal immigrant is unsafe, and they need to take you either from your home or quarantine you in your home with illegal immigrants. Here we go. Nickelback, early 2000s band. Every millennial knows Nickelback. Gen Z probably wouldn't be able to name this band. Farmers and protesters are congregating en masse for what is going to be a massive weekend demonstration against their corrupt government, destroying the country with insane policy. Hey, Paris, Kim.com, mega upload. Hey, 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 hey. So we got a lot of, we got the Eiffel Tower right here. We got tractors. And let's see, we got a whole line of vehicles, and then we got a bunch of hay. This hay is actually kind of expensive too. I don't know if people understand how expensive these piles of hay are. A couple $1,000s worth of hay just lined up here. Let's see. What it's going to take before the citizens decide to stand up. Now, this is a meme with our founding fathers. We got George Washington, we got Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson. We got a bunch of other people in here. Okay, we got some. I'm trying to think if this is extracted directly from the Bill of Rights or the Constitution or the Federalist Papers or what. Whoever owing allegiance to the United States levies war against them or adheres to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort within the United States or elsewhere, is guilty of treason and shall suffer death, or shall be imprisoned not less than 5 years and fined under this title, but not less than $10,000, and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. Hold corrupt U.S. politicians accountable for the invasion of our nation. U.S. politicians fiscally enslaved U.S. citizens to a foreign organization via excessive taxation in order to build a one-world authoritarian global government to usurp U.S. sovereignty. Yes, they did.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't need anyone to vote for him.
What'd she say?
We as American people should stand up right now and fight this. It's unbelievable. We've lost 11 Americans today.
That's right.
I'm a veteran. I went over in 2008 and I fought against Islamic terrorists.
Oh.
Wow.
Words can't describe my feelings.
Yep. Yep.
I appreciate your
Thank you for your service.
Yep. Yep.
Bring Trump back! Bring Trump back!
Amen.
Boom. Well, we got Ilhan Omar's propagandist friend, Mujahid Stafio, whatever his last name is. The most common second language in Minnesota is Somali. We don't need Kadans to keep Ilhan in power. We are self-sufficient. If anything, my tweets did a good job at ensuring she remains in power by helping her regain Somali support. Okay, so what does this tell us? This tells us that Ilhan Omar's base is just a bunch of Somalians. And what does that say about Minnesota? It says that it's been overtaken, maybe, by immigrants and Somalians who aren't necessarily very loyal to the United States. They don't hold the same values. Now, the other interesting thing about this map is apparently these are the most popular second languages in each state. In Wisconsin, we have Hmong, which is really interesting. I didn't know that. Vietnamese is also really interesting in Iowa. I didn't know that either. Polish does make sense for Illinois since there's so many Polacks who immigrated to Chicago before World War II, really. German in West Virginia. Sorry, that's not West Virginia. Yes, it is. We got Haitian and Creole in Florida. That makes sense. Vietnamese. That makes sense. We got Tagalog? What the hell? What the hell's Tagalog? German, didn't know that. Vietnamese? Sorry, that's Arabic is West Virginia. Interesting. German, Korean. I don't even know where West Virginia is. Fuck it. Chinese. German makes sense for North Dakota. South Dakota. It's an Indian language. Got a lot of French up here. That kind of makes sense because it's close to Canada. Maine, we have French. All right. Unmute. Don't know what happened here, but... Oh wow, someone's running. Don't know what happened. Some random video. Okay. All right, they have yellow tape up here. So update, Paris attacker, a national from Mali with Italian residency. It's reported that the attacker wielded a hammer and knife, injuring 3 people, 1 seriously. Reuters. Not good. Watch. Gavin Newsom witness. Son of a gun. Gavin Newsom witnessed a shoplifting at Target. His cashier blamed the governor without realizing who he was. Ghost emoji. Here he is. Sticker spotted in New York City. Imagine what they did when we couldn't see their crimes on our phones. True. I mean, I always wonder this too. Was corruption worse because it was way more invisible? You never heard about, you heard about like insider trading and that kind of thing being prosecuted. Wealthy people occasionally, like, and very rarely, of course, it'd have to be pretty egregious. But you didn't, you never really, even in the early 2000s, never heard of it. And as soon as Twitter started to pick up speed, and, I wasn't really using Twitter because I just knew they censored everything. Like, and, there was no real need. But, yeah, interesting. Kim.com says... A deportation airline with a fleet of 50 Airbus 320s and an average of 3 daily round trips could return 27,000 illegals from the U.S. to their home countries per day. If this airline would operate 7 days per week, it would take over 2 years to return all of them. 50 huge planes operating at full capacity for 7 days a week for 2 years, and it would still take 2 years. The same way the government will turn off your electric cars when there's protests, they don't want you to attend. This is related to this story. There's been a couple community notes on it. Who knows if it's true, but Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella did an NBC interview with Lester Holt, and he said that AI was the biggest threat to humanity, and then pivoted directly into the election in saying that, misinformation and disinformation, whenever someone uses those terms, by the way, especially if there's someone associated with government or major corporations, it sends up a lot of red flags for me. And he was saying it in a way to indicate that, they're going to monitor how AI is used. By the way, as everyone knows, Microsoft owns a controlling interest in OpenAI, ChatGPT. They run ChatGPT, you know, it's run on the Azure cloud. And yeah, so, I mean, they're going to try and manipulate the election by censoring the information that you have access to or that can be generated through ChatGPT or whatever AI they have. Okay, you can always count on Dr. Anastasia Maria Lupis to come up with some good conspiracy theories. There's a community note on this right here. This is false. Microsoft has not announced plans to, quote, disable computers. The screenshot is from an article posted on the People's Voice, formerly News Punch. Oh, I do remember News Punch. Why did they change it to the People's Voice? Oh, because they got typecast as a fake news website. That's why. But again, Satya Nadella, during that interview with Lester Holt, did go on and on about how AI is, you know, a huge threat to elections and all this nonsense. When they say that, that means they're signaling to you, of course, that they're going to try and rig the election. You know, I have no doubt that they would try and turn off your computer if you're posting information that they didn't agree with. If Bill Gates could, he would turn your computer off if you had posted any criticism directly of him. I mean, look at what he's done to his Instagram. He turns off comments. Whenever he posts on Twitter or X, he does the same thing now. It's not incompetence. They're destroying our country on purpose, you dumb fucks. That was a good one. Lefties keep saying criminal aliens don't cost Americans a dime and contribute to the economy. Yeah, so I have noticed in the last couple of days, you've seen a lot of people talk about how positive it is to have just a ton of immigrants. And the mayor of Chicago here is dealing with the city council that is kind of pushing back on his plans. Oh, wow. So this city council member is saying that each illegal immigrant in Chicago costs the city $9,000 per month. You know, if you have, I don't know. I mean, how many do they have? 50,000? 100,000? It's a lot of money. The 2020 election was stolen. Can we unmute the tab, please? Yes, we can. Boop.
Machine, and there's a serial port.
Miller. I'm a professor of computer science at Georgia Tech.
Rich DeMilo.
It looks like he has a USB connection into the scanner.
The serial console in the back gives us a root shell.
That means you have control of the machine.
Have full control of that, and then we can change the results of what it's scanning. My computer is connected to the machine. This is a serial cable.
So we got an Asperger's here.
To the back of the machine. Take off the back of the machine, and there's
looking at the hardware.
Port, and that gives us
looking at the motherboard here on
there's no security subsystem on
the actual device.
Nope. There's no password on it. With this
just use kind of a serial port.
Rewrite the code that's running on there and
connect to the
count votes in
cables.
whatever way you want it. You would do this
And
in
then
advance
he's able
election
to,
night, and then wait for the results to come in.
You could
I don't know, manipulate
control the election
whatever's
results.
coming in and
Either
coming
way,
out
as
here.
long as I had physical access to either plug something in or take off the back and plug something in there.
But you just need that access briefly.
Once, yes, very briefly.
About how long?
If
So-
you had this all prepped and ready to go.
I mean, all
a
he has to
minute.
do is
It's
override the
easily
firmware on the
possible for-
device. And he can boot to his own thumb drive or whatever to, you know, if he wants to boot from a virtual disk from that laptop, he could do that. And then he could just, you know, look at the data that's being stored on the device itself, and he could potentially change any of that data. So, you know, he could change votes, he could change candidates, change the metadata itself.
Somebody to get into these machines because they're unsecured for such long periods of time. I have done research on and personally watched 150 elections at least. Two of our experts and I went to the closing of the polls in one of the recent elections. At the end of the closing of the polls, the poll workers left us there with about 6 voting machines.
Hard drives are totally open.
I was with 2 guys who could have gotten into those machines
Not
in a matter of
encrypted.
seconds and put in malware.
The machine we're in front of is a central count scanner. It's the ES&S Model 650. It's, to our knowledge, the most widely deployed central count scanner in America. Anytime you do early voting or provisional voting, or anytime you're in a state where they do central tabulation of all the ballots, so they bring them to one place, this is the kind of high-speed scanner they would use to count ballots. Historically, these machines were examined, and they determined there was a number of serious problems with them by virtue of messing with the zip disk. Just turn it on for
Zip disk. Okay, so
3 minutes and stick a disk in, wait 1 minute, and then walk.
it's got like almost a floppy drive here. This is a really, really old piece of hardware.
Walk away. You're able to change the behavior of the machine any way you want, including changing the results of an election.
It's
Zip
probably
disk.
easier to do all of this.
Oh, I remember zip disks. Those are these are really old. Geez, I can't believe they're using zip disks in here. That was kind of like the iteration beyond floppies to hard drives, like external hard drives. When external hard drives became more ubiquitous, in between that time period, you had these zip disks.
By just plugging in a zip
So this
disk.
probably came from a server someplace.
I have no idea where they're getting their program.
I don't know,
downloaded-
like you would think that they're using Dominion devices or something. I don't know what kind of, I mean, these look like really old machines. I'm wondering if these are Dominion or the other one.
A image of the operating system, the software that runs on this
Okay,
machine.
so they took an image, a virtual image of the drive itself
from a Russian server.
from a Russian server. So the Russians have already got in there over some network connection. It's probably connected to Wi-Fi, and just taken, you know, images of these hard drives.
How many people might have access to stick in a zip disk
Or-
like
or a
that?
zip
It would
disk.
be everyone from elections officials to people who run the storage facilities, volunteers in the election,
A ton of
security
people
guards,
have access
you
to
name
it. I mean, you'd think that you have some internal operating system that was encrypted, almost like Tails, like a Linux distro. And then you would have, I mean, the thing is with this election vote counting software, you really need like a CMMI of 5. So the capability maturity model index, it's like an old standard for building software. NASA used to require it for certain, you know, resilient systems. It's a Carnegie Mellon Institute, Software Engineering Institute standard. And once you reach like a 4 or 5 threshold, that means the software is like built extremely well, and that it will, you know, survive all kinds of different events or circumstances. And in the sense that any software potentially would be used for an election to count votes, I mean, you'd want to kind of have that level of maturity built in. And that's exactly why these devices should never be used in actual elections at all, because they can easily be hacked. They, you know, we don't know who has access. Even the most, if you built this thing, even the most extremely well-built software like NASA quality systems, it still would not be suitable for elections for so many different reasons.
There's going to be tens of thousands of people who have access to the machine in that fashion. And our adversaries definitely have this machine in Russia, period.
The thing about like the blockchain is everything you do on a blockchain is an event. And if you try and go back and modify data, there's an event there. And if you have an encrypted blockchain, meaning that you can't go back and manipulate previous metadata about a transaction, then there's some security in this, but I don't think these devices have that level of sophistication built into them.
Period.
There are so many possible hacks and so many possible vectors for entry. It's hard to believe that someone's not taking advantage.
I remember doing a lot of research on this, probably around 2004 and 5. I was writing a couple papers on this in college, and sort of this intersection of computer science and elections. I took a couple classes on this, and I had to write a couple papers on it. So I kind of remember some of the leading research of that period, and people, someone really brilliant figured out how easily it would be to manipulate and rig an election using these devices, and they've rolled them out in such a fashion at a time when they really, really wanted to defeat a particular candidate. In this case, they wanted to ensure that President Trump would not win re-election. And even in 2016, I mean, we don't have a thorough analysis on some of the machines then, if they were used. That would be kind of interesting. Based Dad, your mom said you were concerned about gas prices, but you voted him in office, dumbass. Okay, signatures are important. We have Joe Biden as a senator here, the original Joe Biden. That looks like a strong Sharpie signature. And then we have just the regular kind of, pen signature, the double Joe Biden, and I think this is symbolic of Joe Biden's strength now as president of the United States. I realize he's probably using a different pen, Sharpie versus just a regular pen, but yeah. Everyone knows the election was stolen. 81 million, my ass. Have you met anybody that likes Joe Biden? Now, I will say that I have met one person that likes Joe Biden, and his name is Bruce fucking Winger. The biggest fucking dipshit lawyer you will ever see in your life. And you know what? The very, very few people who actually like Biden are either the biggest liars in the world, or they are baby boomers who are retired and either in their late 60s or early 70s. That's it. You know why? Because they are not in touch with anything going on in the real world. And for some reason, they like Joe Biden because they don't have to do anything. They just sit at home. This is a powerful visual. The pharmaceutical industry does not create cures, they create customers. Seems that way. NYPD chief decries total breakdown of justice after police assault by illegal immigrants. 5,000 views. Well, in all fairness, the legal system has been totally destroyed, I think, in all respects. In many different angles. And, you know, I saw an article in the New York Post today about this family court judge in New York or the Bronx or something. And she was on some swingers dating app, and she had somehow, maybe it was her husband, I don't know, made contact with a litigant for her. And, you know, I really started thinking about this, because how come it's always these women in these positions of authority now that are just ruining society? I mean, they're just drunk with power, and they're just dictatorial. What happened to our country? And I get it, you know, in families and relationships. I mean, this is how women act, right? They can do anything they want. Men will, you know, are like lemmings in relationships with these kinds of women. Not all men, but there are a lot. So they're kind of cocked. And for whatever reason, these are the kinds of women who then take that same approach to life, because they can get away with anything in their family, with men especially. And because they're raising kids, you know, they have full authority over their children. So they kind of, you know, do the same thing there. And that's just, you know, being a mother, a good parent. But they take this same sort of dictatorial scheme, and then they apply it to their professional role. Now, in this case, they're applying it in the legal system as a judge. I've seen this over and over and over again. And very few women, and it's usually older women, and it seems like it's usually kind of like butchy women, I don't know, like lesbians, that are actually reasonable in these settings. And they're like, no, I'm not going to go overboard. You know, I don't know why that is, but it's always these feminine or quasi-feminine women who just, I hate to say it, and I don't mean to be like, I'm not trying to be, because I love women, I love people, but you know, that's just New York City for you, you know. You got Kathy Hochul, governor. That's a good example, right? She's not, she's very dictatorial, but she's not, she's not, like, I think, publicly as overt about it, you know? But she is sort of underhandedly very authoritarian. It's kind of what I'm seeing. Unmute tab. Okay, so this is the Atlanta airport video again. We saw this before. This was a accident. I didn't mean to keep that in there. Matt Wallace, he always says stuff like this and then he never delivers. I have obtained evidence, and he does this in all caps. George Soros is illegally funding the massive border crisis about to expose everything and put him behind bars. Yeah, right. I don't know why he does this. Never delivers. Illuminati coin. Jeffrey Epstein's secret bank account is still moving millions and no one knows why. This sounds like a conspiracy theory and misinformation and disinformation. The New York Times reported that the bank had $693,000 in assets when Epstein died back in August, but received roughly $12.9 million in the months afterwards. The account was cleared out and left with just under $500,000 around the first of the year. Full story, the People's Voice. Now that's the same News Punch website that's fake news, right? And you got some Pizzagate hashtags, so you know it's fake. 389,000 views, though. That's pretty nice. African invader jumps on hearse and laughs during a funeral in Spain. They treat everything about our way of life as something to be either ridiculed, destroyed, or exploited. Was he aware? I mean, it's pretty clear, you know, this is a funeral procession. Here he jumps on the top of the hearse. Nice vehicle. I don't know, it looks kind of like maybe Mercedes or something. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious, you know, this is a hearse. I don't know. He's never seen one before. I don't know. But just imagine being in this family and seeing some rando African immigrant, illegal immigrant, jump on the top of the hearse, and your family member is in there, you know. You're dealing with grief, and then you have to deal with this fucking dipshit. Okay, cat turd. The only solution is Trump. 50 Cent. Breaking. Legendary rapper 50 Cent responds to New York City handling $53 million in prepaid credit cards to illegals. I'm stuck, maybe. Trump's the answer. Why isn't... This is a great idea. Why isn't 50 Cent giving 50 cents to each illegal immigrant? On prepaid cards. I mean, I realize printing out those cards would cost way more than 50 cents, but still, it'd be very, you know, it'd be like art. Because your name is 50 Cent. 50 Cent. The Trump 2024 train will be the biggest in world history. Oh, I don't know about that. I have my doubts. I went out of my way today to read some other comments from different types of people from different age groups. And I do see, like, you know, Cat Turds from Georgia, right? He did that Tucker Carlson interview. A lot of Biden supporters are older people. Again, retired or whatever, living off Social Security or retirement. And so you kind of have this generational clash, you know, between, I think a lot of younger people are very supportive of Trump. And, you know, working class people, I think, are very supportive of Trump. But then you have these other sort of, like, you know, gaps here with older people, legal immigrants, some women, a lot of hyper feminine women hate Trump. Don't know why. It's not black against white. When I say we, it's the good against the evil. Well, Tupac was right. With the bandana. Remember the bandana? Used to be a fashion statement. I can remember kids wearing this. The blue or the red bandana. I can't remember. I think Tupac was, well, I can't remember. He was either a Blood or a Crip, right? So, I'm trying to imagine, was he wearing a blue or a red bandana? Oh, it doesn't matter. Illuminati bot. This is a meme. Where's Waldo meme? You got some, you know, stuff going on here. Just a meme. I'm not saying anything. Climate change my ass. Anybody trying to outlaw farming wants to kill us. Yes, you are right, sir. So we got 100% Moj there. We got truth here. I love this conspiracy theory. The North Pole and South Pole are about to be flipped. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Banks collected over 30 billion in overdraft fees last year. I don't know if that's true. If it is, we have a real problem because $30 billion is in fluff fees. You know, it's basically just banks making money off of their own, money supply, even though they stopped counting money supply. M2 back in the day, I think a couple of years ago, 10 years ago during the Obama era, I think they stopped counting money supply because they wanted to get you ready so that you would never really notice inflation. But here's the thing, remember like Wells Fargo was way more aggressive 7, 8, 10 years ago before John Stumpf got prosecuted by the Securities and the Securities Exchange Commission. What's her face? Senator Elizabeth Warren went after him. There was a lot of like personal service that you're paying for at a bank, like going in there and talking to someone. They have to employ that person, but banks are making so much money. I mean, I don't know, this overdraft fee thing, it just seems like making money off nonsense. A lot of these overdrafts, they don't need they can just not do the transaction. They just cut it off. They don't need to do an overdraft. So this guy says another way of saying that banks took $30 billion from people that had no money. Yeah, and it's mostly low income, middle income people that they did this to. Unmute.
My entire 500 acres. My lawyer just called and asked if I was ready for court tomorrow. So hell yeah.
He ain't going.
I ain't going. See, I've been spending the last 6 months booby trapping my entire 500 acres. I got snake pits, rolling logs, bear traps. I got some straight up Indiana Jones shit. I got a fucking boulder that'll fall down when you open my front door. I got about 120 coyotes that I trained to bite anything with a crew cut and a fucking badge. I flew an old Vietnamese man out here and he helped me dig about 12 miles worth of underground tunnels. I have
He's got some Viet Cong tunnels out there.
All around this motherfucker.
He got some independent solar panel energy sources.
It's surprisingly easy to teach a raccoon how to loosen lug nuts and cut brake lines. I'd rather live the rest of my life in the woods living off fucking wild ginseng creek water than go to fucking jail one more time. I don't even try to bring no helicopters down here neither, like I ain't got a whole fucking coop full of pigeons with C4 tied around their feet.
Oh my god.
Got a bunch of PVC pipe with gunpowder and ball bearings and a baboon who is deadly accurate with a nail gun. My lawyer just called and asked if I was ready for court tomorrow.
He's a good old boy. All right. Imagine that flashback. Ilhan Omar's father was top propaganda official in genocidal Somalian Bar regime. Then he changed his and her name and entered U.S. illegally via wherever he came from. Yep. Makes sense. Well, see, okay, Screaming Patriot says, I am so sick of the corruption in our country. It makes me really sad. It's pure evil. It is. It is. No one is doing anything about it. So the reason that this happened in Minnesota with Ilhan Omar is because no one stands up. The very few people who actually do stand up, people like me, look at what happens. They terrorize you. They'll raid your house. They'll throw you in jail for years on end. They'll try and steal your free speech. And then if you speak, then they'll terrorize you and try and arrest you wherever you go. They'll raid your house. They'll throw you in jail again. So you can see how this pattern goes and goes. And it's always established, peaceful, common citizens who are contributing to society professionally through their work, trying to live normal lives, people like me, that they're doing this to. And then all the real criminals out there who are actually committing crimes, stealing from people, committing violent acts, get out of jail without any issue whatsoever the next day. so that's what they do to anyone who stands up to them, you know. And so I get it. I understand why no one wants to stand up, because then they're like, I don't want to lose, you know, my family. I have a lot more empathy too for men who are married and have kids, because you can't really do that. You know, you're kind of cucked, because you kind of have to, you know, be stable, and it would be insane to try and go out and fight this with the idea that you have to be able to support your family as well. But I mean, you do have people actually doing that, like Alex Jones, but Alex Jones is in Texas. Texas allows this. In Minnesota, it's very, 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 very different. And I'm talking about Ilhan Omar specifically. But if you, for example, got a box truck and you put on the side of it, you know, one of those LCD screens or whatever, and you basically just constantly listed out all of Ilhan Omar's crimes, maybe a video of some of her statements on there, and then you maybe parked it right outside of her campaign headquarters, or even, I don't know if she lives there, like her condo. And I'm not saying do this, but I'm just saying theoretically, if this were to happen, she would try and charge you with assault. She would try and charge you with stalking. She would try and charge you with harassment, anything to make sure that your message actually never gets out. And that's why, you know, this happens. And so that is the clash between good versus evil. Good people need to stand up. That's why I stand up. That's a good point, Jake Wild. She's being propped up. You notice how she went after the president of, it was El Salvador today? There's no way that she would have done that without some prompting or something from the State Department. She said that she wrote a letter to Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, complaining about the president of El Salvador. It's very weird. Like, why is she concerned about El Salvador? This stuff comes out of left field. So it has to be something to do with the way that they're kind of detaching themselves from the US dollar and going further into this sort of digital Bitcoin territory. Yeah, there has been an invasion. Ilhan Omar is the Somalian Manchurian candidate. We got to rid her in our Congress. She is bad news. No wonder her views are abhorred. Oh, we got a dog using a mic. What else we got here? I do not believe it. We got Drake here. I mean, again, I don't know if this is AI or what, but we got Taylor Swift wearing an anti-Trump t-shirt. Oh yeah, not using her real name. She's just she changed it. Oh, imagine this. It's January 6th. Oh. Oh wow. I love it. We gotta bookmark this. This is a good find. Here it is. Ilhan Omar's marriage license to her brother. This needs to be exposed. Let's take a look. It's pretty grainy, but we do have a date on it, February 12th. 2009. Eden Prairie. Okay, whatever his name was. Okay, so we have a notary here. I mean, I'm surprised that this notary isn't subpoenaed in the presence of, and can't make this out, Matt Hirsch maybe? And Katie Abramson. We have another witness here. In Eden Prairie. 479 Prairie Center Drive. So that's like, it's kind of by the Eden Prairie Mall, I think. It's like, there's a lot of stores over there. Could be in one of those strip malls as well. I don't know. It's like the main strip in Eden Prairie, right? Prairie Center Drive. I'm pretty sure that's either in Eden Prairie Mall or surrounding it. Fuck. It's Anthony. It's not Anthony Blinken, but whatever. Fuck Anthony Blinken. He's an agent of a foreign nation and should be tried for treason. All right, let's unmute. For the last month, there's been protests every day outside of Anthony Blinken's house. All right, so they're anti-Israel protesters. I think they're yelling "Bloody Lincoln." Wow, I'm actually very surprised that all these protesters are not arrested. I mean, ceasefire now. This is the same thing related to the protesters outside the Supreme Court justices' houses, like Brett Kavanaugh. In Chevy Chase, Maryland. Tucker Carlson is in Moscow to interview Vladimir Putin. Uncensored on X. The deep state and the Biden administration must be in panic mode because Putin, the most censored man in the West, will expose their propaganda and lies. Yeah, good point. Let's see what people say. Okay, we got Snowden here. Kim.com, best 44 billion spent on humanity. Thank you, Elon Musk. Elon went on a tirade today on Twitter. I mean, I've never seen him so animated before about illegal immigration. He's really pissed about that decision, taking away 55 billion from him. He knows that it's all coordinated with the Biden administration. And so now he's, airing his true thoughts more openly, I think. I think it's natural and normal. I mean, he's pissed about losing 55 billion, but I mean, just imagine what happens when they do shit to me, destroy my professional livelihood, fabricate all kinds of shit. Of course, you're going to expose all their wrongdoing. Okay, Putin calls out degeneracy of the West. Here, we got a RT vid. Well, so, the other thing here, which is interesting, is Tucker Carlson is doing this interview exactly when there's sort of a transition going on in Ukraine. And now that it's getting warmer, there's going to be increased military activity in Ukraine. Probably a Russian advance. sort of an offensive. So it's really, I mean, if you just think tactically like that, it's a good time to go and interview Vladimir Putin and get Putin's message out. And, you know, Putin is a very tolerant person. So I think that if he's saying something, he's just going to be like, this is a war against evil and what they're doing. And again, I'm not for war or anything. I'm just saying that's what I am assuming or presuming that Putin is going to say. Like, I'm not pro Russia invading Ukraine or anything. But, I mean, they've pissed off Russia for so long. I mean, they blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Remember that? It would be the second most epic interview of all time behind the Trump interview. Oh, we got a Ron Paul interview from 2014. Let's actually play this. It's only a minute.
And the Russians. Whatever happens, happens.
Well, certainly United States. I speak more from the perspective of the United States taxpayers, and it doesn't serve our interests. We've already spent $5 billion over the last 10 years trying to pick and choose the leadership of Ukraine, and then we participated in the overthrow of the Yanukovych government, and this is when this recent stuff really stirred up. But we've been involved too much, and I take a non-interventionist foreign policy position. It's not our business. It doesn't serve anybody's interests. It's part of the same thing that led us into the disaster in the Middle East. A lot of people die, and a lot of money is spent, and we're still suffering the consequences of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and there's the threat of the war in Syria. We don't need another threat. The American taxpayers don't want it, and our government thinks they can get away with, well, I know the people don't want a war yet, but we're going to play games, and we're going to threaten Russia, and we're going to put on sanctions, and they fail to recognize
Ronan,
that we
I
have
just saw your comments now. You said, I haven't seen any evidence of Russia or China interfering in elections, yet I've seen plenty of evidence of the U.S. intelligence agencies interfering in elections worldwide. Very true. I think that we've seen more evidence, too, of Democrats interfering in elections here, particularly as it relates to just weird ballot issues, you know, dumping ballots off at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, we saw massive ballot dumps at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Now we've seen everything with 2,000 mules. You know, how come the machines always fail in Republican or conservative districts, like in Arizona? A lot of sketchy stuff happened down in Arizona as well. I know that Kari Lake has been fighting all of that for a very long time, and they have tried to, you know, buy her off, prevent her from being on the ballot. I mean, look at what they're doing right now in Colorado with Jenna Griswold, trying to keep Trump off the ballot there, and then going to the length of actually getting a decision from their state Supreme Court declaring that Trump is an insurrectionist based on some insane clause from 150 years ago that doesn't even exist and doesn't apply to President Trump's role in government. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But yeah, I mean, you know, the whole idea of using these machines is just a way to rig elections. That's why they're created, obviously. Duh. So the introduction of them, particularly as it relates to our own domestic elections, just introduce this sort of wild card situation that then allows this parliamentary control system then to kind of be injected into society. You know, ruled by the minority, you know, tyranny by the minority. Ronan, if you want to call in too, I got Skype going. Again, no pressure, bro. How's Australia, by the way?
$100 billion of investments in Russia. Russia has $450 billion invested in the West, and all we're doing is trying to stir up more trouble. It makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense for us to mind our own business and let some.
really wise people within the government who were completely against NATO expansion in the 90s when it first started. At least 3 secretaries of defense, Robert McNamara, Robert Gates, George W. Bush and Barack Obama's Secretary of Defense, William Perry, who was Bill Clinton's Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Defense at the time, they all opposed it in like the strongest possible language, and all explicitly for the reason that this will provoke a conflict with Russia. George Kennan, who was the founder of the containment strategy, the old school Cold Warrior. There's this great interview he gave with Thomas Friedman from the New York Times. You can find it online.
Thomas
and it's in the
Friedman.
90s when they're doing the first round of NATO expansion. And he is like furious. Like his anger comes through the page when you're reading it. Because he's like, what are you guys doing? We won the Cold War. We won. And now you're picking a fight with Russia. And this isn't Vladimir Putin's Russia. This was Boris.
We won the Cold War so well that Russia actually adopted capitalism in a very pure form. And it's almost like roles are being reversed here.
Boris Yeltsin, you know, and he's like, these aren't the Soviets. These aren't the communists. These are the heroes who overthrew them. Why are we picking a fight with them? And he was a Cold Warrior. He was like, you're throwing away my life's work. And he said, the people who are advocating expanding NATO are going to continue advocating expanding it and expanding it and expanding it. And then there will be a Russian reaction. And then when there's the Russian reaction, they're going to say, see, that's proof.
Here's what I think most people don't understand about Russia either. I mean, I constantly talk about, you know, the fact that no one understands that Vikings created Russia originally in Kiev. Rurik, the whole Rurik dynasty called Rurikids. And they were kind of the first lineage of czars in Russia. And Rurik, who is the original Viking who founded an outpost in Novgorod, which is about 40 miles north of modern-day St. Petersburg, he created a fortress there on the main river going through there. And then he called his buddy up, Oleg, who then founded modern-day Russia and Kiev. And if you know anything about Viking history, Vikings don't give up. They're warriors. There's like a warrior gene. I know that I have it. The Russians will not, and I'm not saying all Russians are like that. More so in Northwest, like the Northwestern Federal District that encompasses St. Petersburg and Novgorod. There's a lot of Scandinavian bloodlines. They're like cousins up there almost. If you look at some of the DNA and genetic stuff. And I don't want to get into the whole, like, you know, Democrat identity politics thing where you're constantly talking about people's ethnicities and yada, yada, yada. But it is true that Russians, for whatever reason, have the same process applied to conflicts, battle, war, whatever you want to call it. They will not give up. Once they've made their choice, once they've made their mind up, like going into Ukraine and demilitarizing some of the nonsense there with Zelensky trying to provoke a war, it's done. It's over with. Like Ukraine, NATO, whatever, the West can inflict as many casualties as they want. They're not going to give up. It's either all or nothing. People don't really understand that about Russians. Let's put the rest of this.
Proof that we have to keep.
No, there's nothing. Let's keep on going. Oh, interesting. Yeah. So, JD Sharp says he's going to tell Tucker why Russia really invaded Ukraine. Maybe he'll touch on some of the biolabs. This is Stoltenberg, whatever the hell his name is, the Secretary of NATO. Play this.
Sign a promise. President Putin declared in the autumn of 2021, and he actually sent a draft treaty that he wanted NATO to sign to promise no more NATO enlargement. That was what he sent us. And that was a precondition for not invade Ukraine. Of course, we didn't sign that. The opposite happened. He wanted us to sign a promise never to enlarge NATO. He wanted us to remove our military infrastructure in all allies that have joined NATO since 1997, meaning half of NATO, all the Central and Eastern Europe. We should remove NATO from that part of our alliance, introducing some kind of E and B or second-class membership. We rejected that. So he went to war to prevent NATO, more NATO close to his borders. He has got the exact opposite. He has got more NATO presence in the eastern part of the alliance. President Putin.
Okay, here's what's also stunning about this admission. He is admitting that NATO is actively involved in eastern Ukraine. You know, and they try and use the propaganda through lamestream media to say this is like Ukrainians fighting for independence. It's really just NATO heavily involved in Ukraine. Remember at the start of this whole thing, it was all about Ukrainian independence, and now you get all these other stunning admissions from these people. Oh yeah, it's actually just NATO. Oh yeah, they'll say that Tucker is a Russian asset. You know, I wonder if this trails back to during the Cold War with Reagan. They would always, like the Red Scare, you know, they'd always claim that people were communists. It's almost like McCarthyism, right? They would tie the Russian communist sort of orthodox to the Russian communist orthodoxy to the idea that they were like, you know, outing people, blacklisting people, whatever. And now it's just you're a Russian asset. If you're a Russian asset, that means that you're pro-capitalism, I don't know about human rights as it relates to this war stuff, but just like, you know, the common average everyday Russian. I'm not talking about Putin and Russia as a state as when it's invading other countries, but in some of the corruption, you know, there's a lot of corruption in Russia as well. I mean, they took down what's his face, you know, flying back in from Wagner with a surface-to-air missile. So they just, you know, assassinated him. Yeah, I mean, pro-family, probably. I think if anything, Putin's going to talk about family values in Russia. I think that's going to be really a important concept to drill in. Syria, okay. Holy cow, I can't believe this is happening. They said that the CIA had warned Tucker Carlson about not interviewing Vladimir Putin for various reasons. Oh, this is it, yeah.
I'm not hiding anything, but I was definitely hiding my plan to go interview Putin just because it's an interview.
So how did that happen?
Business.
How do you know the NSA broke into your signal?
Because they admitted it.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Like, can you tell us about that? Like, how did you find out?
I got a call from somebody in Washington who would know, just trust me, so I went up there for another reason, but this person said, you know, are you going to come to Washington anytime soon? This was a year and a half ago, and I was like, yeah, actually, I'm going to be up in a week. Meet me Sunday morning. So weird. Like, who does that? Just text me. You know what I mean? Just text me. No. So I go, and this person's like, and this is someone who would know. Are you planning a trip to go see Putin? This was the summer before the war started. And I was like, how would you know that? I haven't told anybody. I mean, anybody. Not my brother, not my wife, nobody. And just because, you know, it's one of a million things you're working on. But that was one of them. I want to go interview. Why wouldn't I want to interview Putin?
And here's some more from that interview.
How would you know that? Because NSA pulled your text with this other person you were texting. How did you know that? And so I was intimidated. I'm embarrassed to admit, but I was completely freaked out by it. I called a U.S. senator who I know, not that well, but it seems like a trustworthy person. And I told him the story. I said, I just want to tell you this. And then I went on TV on Monday and I'm like, this happened. And so they had, in Congress asked NSA, and NSA is like, yes, we did this, but for good reason. What would be a good reason to read my, what? But the head of NSA, it's fine. It gets, because everyone's in on it. Republicans and Democrats are all in on it.
Oh, yeah.
And by it, I mean the assumption that there's no privacy whatsoever, that they have a right to know everything you're saying and thinking.
Right. Totally fine. But we just want to make sure you're okay.
I'm not hiding anything.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, wow. So interesting. Elon Musk had just commented on this thread 5 minutes ago. I don't know if that was now 10 minutes ago when I opened this. To be fair, Putin is no stranger to propaganda himself. 8,000 views on that. Let's see, we don't have 9:33 p.m., so it's 7 minutes ago now. Kim.com. Kim.com is really pissed at Joe Biden too, because Mega Upload got taken out by Joe Biden when Joe Biden was either a vice president or a senator. Remember, Kim.com was down in New Zealand. And he hired a couple white shoe law firms up in New York to defend him. There's a bunch of copyright stuff. I mean, they were just trying to say that he was fraudulently stealing just a ton of videos, because Mega Upload was a huge Pirate Bay type website. It's kind of like LimeWire meets Netflix. They were like, no, only our corporations can steal your data. You're a German, in New Zealand, we're not going to allow you. Yeah, I think, well, okay. Son of a gun. Tucker Carlson interviewing Vladimir Putin is a significant event, and it will be interesting to see what comes out of the conversation. Come on. Don't have it open, thanks. A little issue here. This extension on this page. Testing some stuff out here, so go back down, come on. Come on, load. Let's play this. Can't hear it.
So popular. He has a rating, apparently, of reaching up to 90%. Hardly anyone can match it. And the reason I think
90%. Now, is that true?
Is that he restored Russia from the...
Okay, so there's this nationalism in Russia and this idea that Putin restored Russia to its glory.
The chaos
could be true,
and the
people hate Yeltsin.
almost the destruction of the Yeltsin years.
People hate Gorbachev.
Now that independence of Russia is intolerable. That's, for me, that's the...
Yeah, Yeltsin was kind of not a puppet, but he was definitely influenced by the West.
Imperial enemies. Any real independence,
Gorbachev
even a
was
semblance
very, very influenced by the West.
Of independence is intolerable, unacceptable. And to have an independent Russia, again, having restored its military industrial complex, certainly its military, into once again a highly sophisticated machine. So it's not only an independent power, it's one that could defend itself. That's unacceptable.
No, if I had to predict, probably shouldn't do this, but I would speculate that I think that Putin is probably going to say that protecting the family and strong family values are the most important thing that he is doing in Russia. And then he's going to try and probably bounce this off and saying he's going to mention something about all these indictments against Trump and how, the democracy, the democratic system in the US is breaking down. He will talk about just, a lot of the woke nonsense. He'll make some comments about that, like the trans agenda, the LGBTQ agenda. He'll talk about that. I mean, just, stuff he normally says anyways. I wonder, so here's an interesting question. You think this is going to happen maybe at the Kremlin? Now, Putin has a couple lake houses. One is near St. Petersburg, kind of by, they say it's near the Finnish border. I'm not totally familiar with where that would be because I thought that the Gulf of Finland blocks most of that, but apparently there's some land-based border with Finland. Maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe I'm misinterpreting what I read, but he's got a lake house there. He's got another lake house kind of in the, I think, the Urals. But yeah, it probably is going to be at the Kremlin. Just to kind of get the backdrop, you would think. But if I were Putin, here's what I would do. I would take Tucker Carlson on Russia's Air Force One or a private jet. And I would see these sit-down interviews get kind of like stifling, I think, especially for guys like Putin. They like to be out, they like to be doing things. Putin is a little bit shorter. For whatever reason, I think that if he's goes on like some, not necessarily a hunting sort of excursion, because it is cold in Russia right now. I mean, it's always cold in Russia, but it's February. Go out and do something fun. Take a flight. Maybe have segments in the Kremlin. Maybe have another segment on the plane. Maybe have another segment out in the woods. Maybe show. Here's what I think is extremely valuable for the American viewer is actually seeing Russia for what it is. Going into a shopping mall, seeing the streets. Now, I watched a lot of Russian live streams over the past 2 years, and the streets in Russia are impeccable. Very, very clean. Now, these are Moscow and St. Petersburg, so it could vary differently between other cities. But for the most part, what I'm seeing is like a lot of modernization. Gas stations are up to date. The old buildings, the facade is extremely well taken care of. You don't see a lot of rundown buildings, I think, unless you're in, out of the big cities. Maybe that's normal for any sort of country, any sort of area, but I think importantly, if you were to do some sort of layered interview. I wouldn't want it just to be totally stifling in the Kremlin, you know, because you get that backdrop, and it seems almost lonely in some of those rooms in the Kremlin because it's just a huge, vast space. And then that opens it up to a lot of criticism from the left. So I'm sure that Tucker is probably strategizing right now on like how to either piss off MSNBC and NBC and ABC, some of the propagandists in the American media, but also trying to limit some of the actual real criticism that potentially could come through, like the Ukrainian stuff. Because I think if they latch on to some of that, I think that would be legitimate and valid criticism. Okay, so this is just another tweet about Tucker Carlson doing the interview with Vladimir Putin. Okay, we got the same crap. We got MTG here. Democrats and their propagandists in the media are spasming at the prospect of Carlson interviewing Putin. You feel entitled to the position of gatekeeper and believe they're the ones who tell you what to think and what to believe. They hate when someone like Tucker goes off script. We have a free press. Well, I don't know about that in this country. And it's people like Tucker Carlson who we depend on to speak the truth. I don't know why people are getting so excited about this Vladimir Putin interview. I don't think it's going to be, it'll get a lot of views, but I don't think it's going to be earth shattering. We already know what Vladimir Putin is going to say. He's going to touch on all of those topics. It's going to be the same content. He's given a lot of these speeches before with a lot of interviewers. What questions Tucker Carlson is going to ask. It's just an interview. It's not like Tucker Carlson is going to end the Ukrainian-Russia conflict. Maybe Tucker Carlson will ask whether or not Vladimir Putin thinks that we are already in World War III. And what could be done to de-escalate the situation. And presumably, Vladimir Putin would say, well, the first thing would be to stop continuing to invest in NATO, especially as it relates to encroaching on our territory in Ukraine. Stop giving weapons to Ukraine, stuff like that. Okay, we got a Loomer tweet. Joe Biden has declined to do a pre-Super Bowl interview. Doesn't matter, who cares? Joe Biden sucks. Tucker Carlson just arrived in Moscow. Ooh, we got an image. Got your boy. We got your boy. Got a producer here. Another producer here. So Tucker brought a couple guys with him. Really nice luggage. Probably Moscow. So this means that they're going to be doing this at the Kremlin. You can tell by the windows here. Good question here. Putin interview. So here, the other thing here is whether or not Tucker will post part of it on X and then maybe do the full interview on his website, tuckercarlson.com. Because then that will drive memberships, $10 a month. Maybe Tucker will post the full thing here. I don't know. I don't think Tucker is super interested in making money. I don't think he wants to. I mean, he needs money, but I don't think he, like everyone else, he needs money, but I don't think he's, I don't think his ulterior motive is greed. So if I were to predict, if I were a betting man, I would say that Tucker Carlson would probably just post the full interview on X because of the fact that Tucker is interviewing a world leader. It's relevant. It's a matter of public concern. I wish someone out there, so I don't, okay, we got lies. No, wait. No, that's not, it's, oh, it's boobies. Okay. Ha ha ha, joke. It's an older code, sir, but it still checks out. Remember the Sharp calculator? I remember those. You don't see those around anymore, do you? Do you see this little solar panel here? That's it. That's all I got. Hope everyone has fantastic rest of their Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I guess it's Saturday, isn't it? I'm an idiot. We'll see you later. Hey, like the video if you can, if you're on Rumble, and follow or subscribe. I'll see you guys later. Thanks. Oh, unless anybody wants to call in really quickly. I have Skype open. Oh, and we also have Spaces I forgot to announce. Otherwise, sounds like no one's going to call in, so I will call it a night. Peace out.